Hi, welcome to the first pose breakdown. Going to look at downward facing dog today. So this is one of the first poses in yoga. I know when I first started it felt quite challenging. So if you have been doing it and your arms are getting tired, then please don't worry, because you're certainly not alone in having that feeling when you start yoga. Um, it can also be really hard to know what your body's doing, and looking at somebody else doing it and wondering if your body's doing the same thing. So if you're in that place, it can be really good sometimes to just make a little recording on your phone, when you're at home on your own and no one else is watching, just so you can see what's happening with your body. But I would just encourage you to know that actually there can be lots of different variations of downward facing dog, and they're all good. So let's look at how to get started in downward facing dog. Often the way that downward dog comes in through classes is from hands and knees. So that's how I'll start going through it today. So coming into an all fours position, hands underneath the shoulders and knees underneath the hips. So seeing if you can bring your spine long here, getting the feeling of pressing down into the hands. And how you want your hands is wide open, but not sort of like super stretching, but just comfortably wide. So kind of like little gecko paws. That really helps with balance. And what you're aiming to do in downward facing dog is grounding down through the knuckles of the fingers. So seeing if you can get your hands really flat. So bringing your hands into that place. Often downward facing dog is taught as the middle finger facing forward, but our hands can all be a little different, and sometimes that doesn't work for everybody. So I would say go with the crease of the wrist facing forward, and then regardless of how your fingers are kind of spaced out on your particular hands, you'll know that you're facing in the right direction. So the creases of the wrist facing forward, and kind of a feeling of the forearms slightly hugging in together, pressing down through the hands, and then tucking the toes underneath. As you press down through the hands and press down through the toes, first thing you want to think about is lifting your hips high. So lifting the hips high. And as the hips lift high, they also start to move back so that the spine becomes really long. So keeping the knees bent for now and bringing the gaze in between the legs. So either in between the knees or the shins or the thighs. That helps the head to be relaxed. Sometimes when we're in these kind of inverted positions, we want to have the gaze down to the ground. That's really normal to want to feel like that. But seeing if you can let the neck relax. Necks do a lot of work in life, so this is one of the few poses where they get to totally chill out. So allowing your neck some chill out time. And then from here, you can maybe see about pedaling through the feet. So when we talk about pedaling through the feet, as you exhale, bringing the right heel down and staying up on the left toes. And then as you inhale, coming back to both toes, and exhale, bringing the left heel down. So that's something that you can play around with. And while we're practicing this, feel free to come down at any time onto the knees. So feel free to have a little break, pause the video, and then come back up again, pressing through the hands. So you can do the pedaling of the feet. You can keep the knees bent, or if you're someone who has sort of very open hamstrings, very open and flexible legs, then you can begin to straighten the legs. Maybe that feels good. Sometimes what can happen when we straighten the legs is that then the spine wants to round if the backs of the legs are quite tight. So if you notice that happening for you, then totally keep the knees bent. Because actually downward facing dog is about lengthening through the spine and lifting the hips. So don't worry too much about the legs needing to be straight. That's not super important. The other thing that quite often happens with downward facing dog is this feeling that the heels need to be on the ground. For some people, their heels, will be on the ground. And for other people, that's something which, will never be possible just because of, your own makeup and how your body is made. So don't worry too much about the heels needing to come down to the ground. The idea is that the heels just reach down towards the ground. So getting a sensation of the heels reaching towards the ground rather than them needing to touch the ground. So that's your downward facing dog. Is this kind of A-frame idea with the hips being high and then grounding down through the hands and the feet at the bottom. But like I said, you know, no pressure at all to have the legs straight, no pressure to have the heels down. You know, this is about finding a place that opens up your body and feels really spacious and good. Yoga's not meant to feel like torture. So if you find that it's feeling like that, then take in a few adjustments to make it feel really good, feel really open. So that's where I'd suggest starting, is pressing through the hands, tucking the toes, beginning with the knees bent, and just focusing on allowing Mr. Neck to relax and be soft, allowing the forearms to hug together, the knuckles of the fingers to ground down, the spine to be long. And then you can play around. The nice thing about pedaling the feet is that it gives you a sense for how tight the back of the legs are before sort of like, you know, forcing them into a position where you might overstretch them. And then taking them as straight as feels good. So absolutely keeping a bend in the knees if that feels good, straightening them if that feels good, and just seeing what it feels like to reach the hips high, allowing the chest to sink low, relaxing the neck, pressing down through hands and feet. So that's pose breakdown for downward facing dog. If there's anything that I've missed or anything that doesn't feel clear, pop it in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer it for you. But hopefully that feels really helpful, and do take a little video or a little picture of yourself if you're wanting to see how that pose is looking in your body. And like I said, you know, allow a bit of pressure to come off, because there's so many variations of this pose that are really good and totally work. So yeah, hopefully that feels helpful for you, and that helps build your practice. Okay, look forward to doing another pose breakdown with you soon, and hope you have a great day.